Welcome to KSKQ 89.5, Ashland, Oregon, community-supported radio. The name of the show is Your Brain in the Cybersex Jungle. I am Gary Wilson. This show contains adult themes, as it will for the next half hour, so keep the little kids out of the way. I wanted to do a disclaimer time. The Your Brain in Cybersex Jungle show is informational only. It is not medical advice. If you need medical advice, please see your doctor. The central theme of this show is how internet pornography impacts usually young men, their experiences, and the science behind what they are experiencing. You can visit www.yourbrainonporn.com for video presentations, FAQs, mini articles, and forums. Today's show is going to have a guest. Last week, I went over the basics of porn-induced erectile dysfunction, a surprising new phenomenon that is paralleling the rise of high-speed internet porn. We looked at it last week, and these young men were quitting porn, and they regained their erectile health. They also experienced many other benefits, such as better concentration, more confidence, more motivation, less anxiety, depression, and, of course, greater attraction to real females. Today, we have a guest. He's 25 years old. He developed ED after years of porn use. He then abstained for a period from porn, and eventually he gained his erectile functioning, sexual functioning, and libido, and all of that. Gabe, are you there?
I am, Gary.
Okay, I'm just going to adjust your volume a little bit. So can you tell us about your story, your history with porn use, and how it affected you growing up?
Yeah, man. My story is very similar to a lot of guys that you see on the forums and stuff, but I would say, well, first off, I want to say I was raised with a loving family. I wasn't abused or anything. I know a lot of sexologists and stuff like to say that, people that are addicted usually had some other thing happen to them to cause that addiction. But in my story, I had no traumatic experience when I was a child growing up. But around the age of 8, I was walking around my neighborhood. I got a lot of men in the neighborhood, and I have an older brother, and I don't know whose it was, but I found a Playboy magazine out in the bush around my neighbor's house. So it could have been my brother's, could have been neighbor's, I don't know. But I still remember my first image of seeing a naked woman, man. It completely blew my mind and shocked me, and I'll never get that image out of my head. So as soon as that happened, man, I completely got lost in the world of sex in my brain, and I started masturbating then, about the age of 8. My family got cable TV when I was 10, so everyone knows what that means. I now had access to late-night HBO softcore porn. I would stay up late at night. My parents would come in there and make sure I'm asleep, and of course I did the fake out of acting like I was asleep until they left. And then as soon as the door was shut, I'd get up out of bed and watch, softcore porn till 3 or 4 in the morning. And this was when I was 10, 11 years old. So that continued until I was about 12. My family got DSL, broadband internet, fast internet. And as soon as that happened, I was immediately watching hardcore porn. I figured out how to do it and hide it, delete the history. I would use Kazaa and LimeWire and stuff like that. I would download the videos and then delete them when I was done watching them. So I was hooked on very hardcore porn by the time I was in 8th grade, about 12, 13 years old. There was one time that I kind of gave up porn, and that was my freshman year of high school. I talked to some older guys, and they gave me some advice to quit using. And so I said, okay, they said it only leads to regret, and it just gets worse and worse. You need to escalate into harder material. So I took their advice and stopped for a little bit. But an interesting thing happened at my high school. We were one of the first high schools in America where all the students were issued laptops.
Oh, that's good news.
As you can imagine, being a 14-year-old boy at high school, the first thing we did was try and figure out how to play video games. So we got around the blocks that they put on there so we could game in class. And the second thing we did was figure out how to get around the blocks to watch porn. So you can imagine a bunch of 15-year-old, 14-year-old boys in class watching porn in the back without the teacher knowing. Sad, and I regret the whole situation, but it's the truth, and it happened. Porn use continued all through high school. it kept escalating into more hardcore pornography. Pretty much seen everything there is to see, as far as genres are concerned. By the time I was out of middle school, so I just my fetishes changed all throughout high school. And another thing I should add is I became sexually active in 8th grade also.
Okay.
And so I was having sex through high school and in college. Something I noticed in college was that my drive for life just started dropping off fast. My motivation to, get a good job, my motivation to be successful, hang out with friends, hang out with my family, it just started fading away, and I just became real isolated rather than, really social. And my personality, everyone that knows me, is I'm a real social person, so it's just kind of weird that I would rather just stay at home and be by myself than go out and have fun with my friends.
And
but that didn't really catch my attention. What did catch my attention is my sex drive for real women. And that happened around the age of 22 is when I first noticed it. Then, at the beginning of last year, 2011, I was with a beautiful girl. She was everything I wanted, a 10, a complete 10 on what I see as attractive. And, we went for sex, and nothing happened at all. And I know for sure it wasn't performance anxiety because I wasn't nervous. I was confident. There was just no sign of life in my manhood. And so
that got your attention?
It freaked me out, man. So I ran home. The next day I got on Google and started going to town, and all I could find was performance anxiety answers. If you're young and you're nervous, it's performance anxiety. So I was like, okay, I'm not nervous, so it's not performance anxiety. And it took me 2 months to find your thread. Actually, it's not your thread, it's on medhelp.com. You were commenting on it. I saw a test that you said to do, and it's first masturbate to your favorite porn, see if you can get an erection, which I could. And then the second thing was try and masturbate with just touch and no fantasy. So I ran to the bathroom, and I tried it, and it blew my mind that I could not even get a slight erection to my hand. And I even tried fantasy, and I still couldn't get an erection, no matter how hard I tried. And obviously that's not performance anxiety because I was all by myself.
Exactly.
So that's my story on where I ended up, and I had full-blown ED. One more thing is I tested right at that time. I was watching porn. I laughed at first like, holy crap, like this is legit. I can't believe porn caused my ED. So to test it, I ran to my room and watched hardcore porn, and as soon as I clicked my favorite porn, I got an erection immediately. And then as soon as I would look away from the screen, my boner would go away like within 3 seconds. It was insane. It was definitely porn caused it.
Yeah, and we have that test because, as you said, urologists, sexologists, or guys who go to therapists or even just search the internet will usually not find information on this, and they just assume that it's anxiety, but no one bothers to try doing it without porn, without fantasy, to actually test it. It would be nice if therapists actually had that as a test. So what'd you do after that? Obviously, you decided to do what?
Well, I saw your advice. I eventually found your website, yourbrainonporn.com, and I read everything on there, and I immediately made the decision to give up porn. Upon first reading around, this was in the early days of recovery stories, I thought it was going to take me about, 6 to 8 weeks. So I was like, all right, cool, 6 to 8 weeks, no big deal. 3 months rolls around, and no sign of improvement. So
that must have been scary.
Freaking out.
Yeah.
By this time, withdrawal symptoms had hit me heavy. About 3 weeks in, I went into a flat line, and about 3 months in, my stress levels went through the roof. I would say my lowest point during the recovery process is kind of funny. I was at work, working for an industrial supply company, and my job was to count nuts and bolts. So I was sitting in the warehouse, literally counting nuts and bolts in my hand, thinking about the fact that my nuts and bolts didn't work. And so I ran outside, and I, had an anxiety attack. I was crying, man, and there were some cardboard boxes in the alley, and I was kicking them. And just completely losing my mind. I had insomnia. I would shake. My muscles ached. I started chewing on pins and just weird stuff that isn't my personality at all. I'm usually pretty laid back. So, man, I can tell you right now that the withdrawal symptoms from giving it up are very real. I know a lot of guys relate to that, definitely. So that was 3 months in. I was actually in a flatline for about 5 to 6 months.
So explain, what is a flatline according to guys who stop using porn?
The way I always describe it is a complete loss of sex drive physically. Like you have no physical reaction when you see an attractive girl, or you think about, some guys even say they don't even want to watch porn. They have this whole mindset of, like they just don't want anything to do with it. So that's how I would describe it. A flatline is just no physical drive to want sex at all. Even though you might mentally want it, you have no reaction in your body at all towards sex.
So it's like someone sucked out all of your testosterone and dopamine or something, but...
Exactly. You can't feel any dopamine hits. No way.
Okay. And so you're at about 6 months. Go on with your story.
Yeah, okay. So about 6 months in, I started... periodically throughout the reboot, I was forcing orgasms, and I would just say right now that's not smart. I'll say it again later when I give advice. The orgasms that I had definitely slowed me down. If I would force an orgasm through oral or hand stimulation, it would just completely send me back into a deep flatline for, weeks to over a month again, and this was after 6 months of abstinence. So highly suggest staying away from orgasm. But one thing I noticed, which is kind of interesting, is I was able to get an erection, a mediocre erection, for oral sex long before I could for vaginal, because my brain was wired for oral sex. A lot of the porn I watched from a young age, all through high school and college, was oral related. I could tell that when oral sex was an option, I could feel the dopamine in my head getting excited, the anticipation, and I could get an erection to that. But when it came for actual vaginal sex, there was no chance. And that took a few more months to be able to do that. About around month 9 was when I was fully recovered to actually have successful sex.
What it reminds me of is, of course, if you're having oral sex, you can actually watch, and that might be part of it. The ability to watch would be part of it. So you're listening to KSKQ 89.5. This is Your Brain in the Cybersex Jungle, and we are having adult themes today. Our guest is Gabe, and Gabe's telling us about his recovery from porn-induced ED. So you say you recovered around 9 months? And
yeah, it took me 9 months, and there's a few reasons it took me so long to recover that I'm positive of.
What are those?
And the first one, as you're well aware of, it took me so long to recover because I started using porn at 8 when my brain was highly, vulnerable and plastic. I was on softcore videos by age 10, hooked on real hardcore porn by age 12, and I continued that all through my adolescence. So that's the first reason that it took me so long to recover. The second reason was because of the type of porn I got into, which wasn't natural. It was rough, just disgusting and gross. It escalated into things that I did not want in real life. I would never want to do that with a real partner. Just a lot of weird fetishes and stuff that it escalated into. That's reason number one, or number two, that it took me so long to recover. The third reason that I just mentioned a second ago was that I was forcing orgasms. And I see this all the time on forums, and you do too. Probably one of the most number one questions asked is, can I have sex during a reboot? What I say, and you said it 1,000 times, is if you have ED, if you have porn-induced ED, it's best to stay away from any orgasm for a period of time. I always say there's two steps to a reboot, and that's first to reboot, which is complete abstinence of sexual stimulation, and then the second part is to rewire to a real partner. Not that you don't have some natural wiring for a real partner, but it just helps to retrain your brain that that's where the reward is, that's where the dopamine needs to be going.
Yeah, so for listeners, this reboot is guys giving up porn, but those who have erectile dysfunction find that they usually have to give up orgasm, and it's strange. We don't understand why. No one understands why, but obviously the sexual circuits have been overloaded and affected, perhaps deep circuits within the brain. So who knows why, but that's what guys continually find out. So what would be your advice to fellow rebooters? Because that'll be a lot of the guys who will be listening to this show.
My first advice would be to read yourbrainonporn.com and read the facts. Frequently asked questions has pretty much everything you need to know. That's one of the first things I did was I went through your whole site and read everything. I read the facts over and over and over again. If it's not on the facts part or the facts document, then we really don't have an answer for them. So, what we know, like you said, what we know is on your site. That's my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice, if you have porn-induced ED, stay away from orgasms for as long as possible. I'll bring up now the orgasm reboot. YourBrainRebalance.com. There's a thread that Underdog started called the Orgasm Reboot, where guys are discussing what effect orgasms during a reboot have on them. Most of them say that if they have an orgasm while they're trying to reboot, it sends them back into a flat line, and I know that's true from my case. And it slows down recovery. An orgasm with a real partner is not going to completely take away recovery, obviously, but it has definitely been seen that it slows it down or maybe stops it for a period of time. So that's another piece of advice. I guess I would just say be healthy. Exercise. A lot of guys do meditation and yoga. There's been studies that show meditation increasing D2 receptors. Intense anaerobic exercises increases D2 receptors. Intermittent fasting increases D2 receptors. And I actually tried fasting. My cousin and I went to a cabin in the woods for a couple days during my reboot, and we just read books. We didn't eat for about 2 or 3 days, and it was interesting when I came back from that. Everything I ate tasted amazing. Like, I hate raw broccoli, and even raw broccoli just was good, and no one likes raw broccoli unless you're into that kind of thing. But
now a bunch of guys are going to be eating raw broccoli to try to get over their ED, so that'll be
No, basically I'm just saying eat healthy, work out. You got to fill the void. When you give up an addiction, you have to fill that void in your life, so go out, meet people. Just be proactive about it. Get out there and do things. And I definitely suggest reading books and not watching TV.
Well, I want to mention something about, you said it took a long time for you. As I mentioned last week, and I'll talk about it in a few weeks, is that younger guys are taking a lot longer than older guys who didn't start on internet porn. The guys who are 40, who maybe used some Playboy pictures but didn't use internet porn, they actually can recover in that 6 to 8 weeks, some of the guys that you read about. And some of them can have occasional orgasms just fine with a partner and recover. So that's why it's so frustrating for these young guys. It just takes longer when you spent your early years wiring to videos of porn. That's just what we're finding out. So here's the thing. You have talked to a lot of people about these problems. You actually speak to people, which is very unusual. That's a very brave thing to do. Can you tell us how they react or what you see, what's going on with young people? Because you're actually an old person. You're 25 and you're ancient now.
I'm still young.
I know, but in comparative to the technology that a 12-year-old can start on now.
Well, they react, jaws drop to the floor, and eyes wide open, man. I've talked to tons of guys my age and a little younger that have actually, after I was done sharing my story and a little bit of the science behind it, they actually said, hey, man, that's happened to me before. And, they'll keep some details out of it, but there's been several guys that I know in real life that I've talked to that have actually admitted to, delayed ejaculation, maybe losing their erection during sex. And, these are guys that you would never guess. They're normal, just regular dudes, and these are guys that I know in real life. So it's definitely epidemic. Like, I don't know the percentages of guys that are severely addicted to porn, but everyone I know at some point in their life has experimented with it and got into it. I talked to a 15-year-old teenager that I know. I kind of did like a little interview with him where I was asking him questions, and he was telling me about porn use at school now. I asked him a question like, man, so all the kids at school have cell phones and stuff and iPhones, like, so how is that at school? And he responded with, man, in 7th grade at middle school, they were watching porn in the cafeteria on the lunch tables on iPhones. They said in the locker room that they're always watching porn on their iPhones. And one kid actually came to school with his phone broken, and he asked why, and he said he dropped it in the shower while he was masturbating.
Great.
Yeah. He said there's a kid that sits next to him in his English class that actually watches porn during class right next to girls sitting all around him. And I said, man, how crazy is it that he has cute girls sitting all around him, but he's watching porn on his phone instead of talking to those girls and, forming that relationship with them? It's just, I can only imagine not only the psychological impact it's having on the girls around him, but just in his brain, too, that he's wiring his brain for that. It's really sad. So that was pretty alarming to hear his comments on the prevalence of use in teenagers at school and in middle school. He said his friend had it on his Xbox in the 4th grade was when he was exposed to it. And I actually have a story just like that. When I was a senior in high school, I had porn on my PlayStation Portable, and I, really ballsy and stupid, put my PSP on the dry erase board behind my teacher and played porn so the whole class could see it. Now, if I could go back in time, I would punch myself in the face for being an idiot, but that's what happened, and I regret it. But
well, I remember my teen days, and I did a lot of stupid stuff, so
yeah.
I probably need to be punched.
My eyes have been open, just looking back on that with, regret. Can't believe how blind I was to how, wired my brain was for porn rather than talking to a real girl. But overall, the reactions of people, when you're honest with them like that, they're all eyes and ears, and they're real open to it. It's not that weird to talk about. Like, I know a lot of people say, it's a real embarrassing topic, but with our culture and society today, if you're nonchalant about it, no big deal, people will listen, and they definitely don't react like you would think, because it's not that taboo anymore. It's taboo not to watch porn now in our culture. So they're definitely receptive to any talks.
I knew nothing really about it 6 years ago, and then all of a sudden my wife's site filled up, as you well know, and then I created Your Brain on Porn, and I've read all these thousands of posts on hundreds of websites, and it's been a real shock for me personally to learn how prevalent it is and how guys are being affected. And of course, we know they're being affected because once they give it up, they see many things disappear.
Exactly.
And you said you've read thousands of posts too on various porn sites such as Your Brain Rebalanced and NoFap and many other forums. What do you see some of the things that are common on these websites and some of the differences that are going on with guys discussing porn and porn use?
Well, the differences are all over the table. We've seen guys that are as young as 13 years old on Your Brain Rebalanced. The kid just made an account and started posting the other day. He's 13 years old, and he's already noticed that his focus on schoolwork has just completely plummeted. His memory's fading, and he has no drive to, be social or anything like that. So that's the youngest account I've seen. Like I said, the differences are all over the table, from age, moral beliefs, physical shape, race. You name it. There's guys from 13 to 70 that have been, reporting improvements when they give up porn. Some of the similarities are they always ask the same questions, which I, again, encourage them to read the information that's already been presented, and I know that's hard to do when you really want to answer quick. Another similarity would definitely be the social anxiety I see all the time, and I myself can relate to that because I'm a real social person, outgoing, I like to be funny and, whatever, but I noticed over the years I definitely got more antisocial. I would get anxious when all eyes were on me. I could just feel it in my brain. It's like my prefrontal cortex just was not being in control, and I could feel the anxiety building up and the pressure. And so that's definitely a similarity between everyone is, I would say, some anxiety, some stress. And the ironic thing is the more you indulge in PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm, the more stress you will feel after the fact.
Yeah, so we have just about 20, 30 seconds left. You want to wrap it up with any advice to anyone just off the top of your head?
I'll just say that parents, if any parents are listening to this, educate your kids. Look through yourbrainonporn.com and read all the science behind it and inform your kids, because if you don't do it, they're going to learn about it at school or from a peer that isn't going to tell them the right information. This is epidemic all throughout our culture. The percentages are way higher than anyone knows, so we need to get educated on it.
Well, thanks a lot, Gabe, for joining us. I'm sure we're going to have you back. We'll see you next week in Your Brain in the Cybersex Jungle.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me, and keep up the good work on making sure our woods work.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Gary.